And a very good evening to you, and excuse me, welcome to our Friday evening edition of Politics 101. Uh, Tonight, of course, we're going to have Dr. Vincent Adams here with us, and we are going to be talking about a wide range of issues. Of course, I'd like to welcome everyone, those of you joining us from Guyana, uh, those of you joining us from outside of Guyana, wherever you are, welcome to Friday evening's edition of Politics 101. Good night to those of you who are joining us from Europe. Good night to you. Lots of you from the United Kingdom, some of you from France. Welcome to Politics 101. I see some of you here from Scotland, joining us from Scotland, some from Ireland. Welcome to Politics 101. Good evening to the people out there on the quarantine coast. Welcome. Good evening to the people of Enmore. I noticed quite a few viewers from Enmore, and we would like to acknowledge those of you who join us from Enmore. Enmore is, in some places, diverse. We know Enmore, eh? But there's North Enmore that is predominantly African Guyanese. And then, of course, there is the South Enmore that we know that is on the sugar estate, and people there, welcome those of you. Good evening to the people of Bedford Acton on the east coast of Demerara, BV. We know that we do have lots of you joining us from BV. We'd like to acknowledge your presence. Linden, good evening. I understand there's an opposition public meeting at Linden tomorrow. So I guess the opposition, AFC, APNU, is coming to Linden tomorrow. Welcome to all of you from Linden. Lots of you joining us from Vreden Hoop. I discovered that yesterday. So I'd like to welcome those of you who are joining us from Vreden Hoop on the west side. On the west side, of course, many consider Vreden Hoop to be the township there on the west side. On the west side of Vreden Hoop, of course. Welcome to Politics 101. Good evening to those of you who are joining us from Jamaica. Welcome. Those of you from the Bahamas, Northern Caribbean, welcome to Politics 101. We'd like the viewers who are joining us via Village Voice. It's a new addition to our family. Those of you who are joining us via Village Voice, we would like to welcome back those of you who are coming to us via CAMS TV. We would like to welcome you back after a couple of weeks. Welcome you back. To those of you who are joining us from YouTube via our YouTube channels, welcome. So please share the link. And let everybody know that we're on tonight. And those of you who have not yet followed our pages, please do so now. Of course, our Facebook pages, Politics 101, Dr. David Hines, and Hinds'Sight, Guyana-Caribbean Politics. And of course, the same name of the channels on YouTube, Politics 101 and Hinds'Sight. So our two Facebook pages, please follow us, and our two YouTube channels. And those of us who are linked to me, you can also get the program through my personal page. Welcome to Politics 101. All those of you who join us from New Jersey, I notice Linda Campbell is with us from New Jersey. Welcome. We want I think it's Florette saying here of the meeting tomorrow. We want it to be PNC, APNU, WPA, AFC. The WPA was not invited. We were invited at the last to be part of the last meeting at Burnham Court. And this one tomorrow at Linden, we were not invited. So I can't, Florette, I can't answer for that. But if you're in Linden, please show up to the meeting. It's an opposition meeting. Those of you who would like to see the WPA at these meetings, have to make your voices heard. But we continue to call on you to support anything the opposition organizes. We in the WPA don't have to be there. As I said, we were not invited. We were not invited. We were invited to the last meeting. We participated. No Kidaki Amsterdam spoke on our behalf. This time we were not invited. But we are saying the entire Linden community, please turn out. Please turn out. Whenever the opposition is having an event, please turn out. Welcome to Politics 101. The meeting is on the cost of living. Poverty. Poverty is a big issue. It's a big issue. Cost of living is tied up with poverty. And, if we were on that platform, we would be dealing with the issue of poverty because we feel that we have to get rid of poverty. All right. Please share the link. Please share the link. Tell you what, Dr. Adams is ready, but we're going to have him wait for a couple of minutes while you all get ready. I see Ron Delane is here. Floretta Hamilton, of course. Sharon Griffith is here. Welcome to this evening's edition of Politics 101. Wherever Desiree is here, Debbie Collins. Welcome to Politics 101. Good evening to you in Linden. As we said, there are going to be an opposition meeting, tomorrow in Linden. Please show up for that meeting. Please show up for that meeting tomorrow. Whatever party you support in the opposition, go there and make a statement. Go there and make a statement. At the end of the day, it is the present regime that we want to shift. Tell you what, while you are going, let's listen to some lyrics on poverty, and then we'll bring in Dr. Vincent Adams.
Cry. I hope you enjoyed this song. It comes from the heart. Every day I keep hearing people talking about the state of the world daily. Some wondering what is happening. Where do we go from here? No one could foresee. Some say it's the fault of the leaders. They say they just like oppressors. Some say mismanagement from the damn faulty government. But while they're blaming and blaming, I see more people suffering. Where do we go and how shall we move on? So answer this question: why Must there be retrenchment among the poor ones who working for few cents to take home to their families? Would someone please tell me why one man could have so much money while the next one day he hungry, trying to survive in his country? And I hear that poor man's cry, how come? Tell me, how come? Oh, how come our country's just going down, down, down? How come? Tell me, how come? Oh, how come this whole world just going down, down, down? Every day I walk about, I look east, west, north and south, and what I see in my mind there is still a doubt. I see vagrancy increase, drugs that wouldn't cease, robberies perform just like in the movie. Some say it's the youths of the nation, they say it's total frustration. Some say they're bad, they're a disgrace, and it's so sad. But while they're blaming and blaming, I hear the youth saying something they can't get over. The qualifications are like a joke. So answer more questions. Why drugs take over the city? You know we can't find no cure for me, and we can't find no cure that I could see. Would someone please tell me why food prices keep rising, nurses and teachers keep on resigning? You know abroad, most of them running, and I hear that poor man's cry, how come? Tell me, how come? Oh, how come our country's just going down, down, down? How come? Tell me, how come? Oh, how come our country's just going down, down, down? Every day I keep praying, night and morning, that things got changed just to end this suffering. I hear Satan say has to be better, and who not mad say they rather dead. But living here, they find it is too damn dread. Some people turn big refugee. They say they can't live in the country. Gone to Canada, Brooklyn, Washington, D.C. But while they're blaming and blaming, I see more hard times coming. I see more problems facing we and we children. So answer more questions. Why? When you're looking at Parliament, you have to feel it's a movie that you rent. The behavior is so indecent. Would someone please tell me why? Every corner that I meet, I see single mothers on the street begging for something for their children to eat. And I hear that poor man's cry, how come? Tell me, how come? country's just going down. Chow, chow. How come? Tell me, how come? Oh, how come this whole world just going down? Chow, chow. How come? Stop this suffering. How come? Stop all this grunting. How come? Just tell me how come? How come? Stop the promising. How come? Stop all the lying. How come? Just tell me how come? How come? Let's join in unity to build back our country. How come? Just tell me how come? How come? How come? Oh, how come? Just tell me how come. Good night, Grenada.
Oh yes, how come? Brother Lester, that's my favorite line. That's my favorite line. The parliament is like a movie I rent. That's my favorite line. Put in. Good evening, Keith. Good evening, Keith. Putting in perspective the question of poverty, and she's from Tobago, Eastern Orr, and after a decade on the calypso scene, she went to the church and she's now singing soca gospel and so forth. A great loss to the art form, Eastern Orr. How come? Really, she was a sensation when she came onto the scene and suffered. Suffered from that in the sense that the success and the attention and so on. But she still sings. She's from Tobago. Tobago, of course, gave us Calypso Rose. Tobago gave us Shadow. Shadows from Tobago. Of course, Nelson, Lord Nelson, King Lear, Tobago. And I noticed this year they ensured that among the finalists of the Monarch competition in Trinidad, there is a set aside space for the Tobago, the finalists or the Monarch from Tobago automatically is on the Trinidad Monarch competition. Eastern Orr, how come? And as I said, my favorite line there, I share it with Lester. My favorite line is the parliament is like a movie I rent. Oh Lord. So welcome to you all, and Dr. Vincent Adams is ready to go. Please remember, if you're from the Linden area, the APNU AFC is going to be there tomorrow, and they're holding a rally against cost of living. We are encouraging all of you to go out and to be part of that assembly. It is not just to hear the leaders talk, but to make your presence felt. Those of you who've inquired know the WPA was not invited, and so we would not have a representative on the platform. But we are encouraging everyone to go out there. Yes, it would have been nice. And if we were there, we would have been talking about poverty. We've been raising some of the questions that Sister Easlyn raised in that clip. So how come we live in an oil-rich nation? I think somebody said that here a little bit earlier. How come we live in an oil-rich nation and the cost of living is so high? How come people We live in an oil-rich nation, and people are still poor. Teachers are earning what they're earning. Would be our message. Let me bring in brother Vincent, and let's get the conversation going. Dr. Adams, good evening.
Good evening, Dr. Hines. What a song! Please send me the video on that song.
Okay,
One of the lines, one of the viewers, the lines that was really striking and applies again. Somebody said, "How come we're suffering in an oil-rich nation?"
yes.
That that was pretty telling. But hello and welcome to all of our listeners, especially of course from Linden or Christianborg specifically, and Albaistung, the areas that I grew up and molded. And so just a shout out to my folks in those areas.
To my folks in those areas, Doc, we come on air tonight, and there are two big headlines. One from this morning, and the one from this morning, of course, has to do with the teachers' situation. The GTU issues new strike ultimatum for to the government. GTU issues new strike ultimatum to government, and the later headline during the day was, of course, ExxonMobil Guyana announces new oil find. Those are going to be our two lead stories this evening. Let's start off with the teachers' situation. Last week we were here, and they had begun negotiations, agreement on the timeline, and then the government reneged. When they went back on Tuesday, the government reneged. The talks collapsed. Let me get your thoughts without any question. Just your thoughts on the development, and then we'll get into some nitty-gritty as we go along.
Sure, Doctor. Well, let's start from the premise, which is a fact, that education and not infrastructure builds a country. And let me repeat that: education is the key pillar to building a country. I mean, that's a universal fact. We've proven that, and especially, and that's the tenet of how the other successful countries are being run, such as the United States, Singapore, and a whole lot of other countries. So let's start from that fact. Now, closer to home, in our specific situation, we've seen what is going on in Guyana. The government has no intention. It's just a hoax to get us off, to get these teachers off the street to start with. It's not in good faith. From start to finish, the teachers are in good faith. They're operating in good faith. They decided, well, okay, let's give let's take the government to their word. They decided to suspend their strike, to go back to the bargaining table, as by the way it was forced by the judge, by the way. But nevertheless, and we can see from the start of that mediation, there was no good intent or good faith effort coming from the government. They started out lying about what was discussed in the meeting to begin with. So we see that the good faith, there's no good faith. And I heard, and of course the vice president yesterday in his press conference, that's what he said. He said the government had went in there with good faith, and the union did not. Of course, he always turns things on its head. But let me just and especially when I hear they're running out of excuses now, Dr. Hines, as to why they're now it's COVID. The newest thing is COVID. I've never heard this one before, that somehow COVID, because of COVID, they don't deserve their pay. Before COVID, it was they can't afford it, they can't sustain it. Now, that's what the vice president is saying on one side of his mouth. On the other side of his mouth, he's saying, let's not have ring fencing. Let's wait, on the money to come in later on because we're going to get more money. And then on the other side of his mouth, he says, well, I don't, we cannot sustain giving teachers a pay raise because I don't know what the oil prices is going to be in the future. And then the president comes out and said, hey, let's have a conscience. Y'all wait until 2027 and you're going to get your money. So here we are from all sides of the mouth. They're not even smart enough to coordinate. The president says to wait until 2027. The vice president says, I don't know what's going to happen between now and 2027. So that's the mixing, the mixed messages we get, and we know that they're dishonest. So that's what the teachers are dealing with. And when they say they cannot afford it, it's absolute nonsense. And I hope that the people realize that the importance of education should be given as a preference, as a priority in our budget, because that's what national budgets are about. National budgets are about priorities for building the nation. And like I said, it's not infrastructure. So here is the unbalance. And you remember President Lula from Brazil. Did you remember what he said? I hope that there's a balance. How could you have a balance when infrastructure is 58% of our economy? It's unheard of in any other part of the world. 58%, meaning for every for every $100, 58% goes to the infrastructure. And of course, we know why that is. They're just a few less than 1% of the rich folks, the friends and families of the powers that be, who gets that money in their pockets. So we've got, the billionaires continue to be billionaires and might even become trillionaires. And the folks who are down at the bottom, they're getting poorer. Education. Remember what I said? Infrastructure is 50. Education is 11%. 11% for the whole education budget. 11% of the budget. And that means it's at least five times less than what there is for infrastructure. The teachers' salaries are 2% of the budget, or $29 billion. So here's where it's when they say they can't afford it, it's hogwash again. Infrastructure's budget is $666 billion. Let me repeat that. $666 billion, almost 60%, more than half of the total national budget. So here's what they can do. Rather than being greedy and putting all of the money in their friend's pocket, even at a minimal 50% increase in salaries above the slave wages of the teachers. The average teacher's salary is $180,000 per month, meaning about $850 per month. So if they could give them 50% raise, it still would be way less than what they deserve. But let's start with 50% as a minimum. Give them 50% raise. You know what that would take, Dr. Hines, if each teacher gets 50% raise? It would take 2% of the infrastructure budget, 2%. So instead of $666 billion for the infrastructure budget, if they reduce it by a measly 2% to take care of this most important sector, it would drop them from $666 billion to $652 billion, a cut of 2%. Are you telling me that this government cannot afford to cut that 2% out of a $666 billion, which is way too high, to make sure that these teachers stop the strike and have at least start with something to live with? So that's where we are. There's no good intention and there's no good faith here. So I hope, Dr. Hines, I hope that this year has really, if there's no more convincing evidence that these teachers now, they did everything within their power. The government does not want to cooperate. I hope the GPSU and all the other unions and the parents and the students join in a mass protest and let everybody get out in the street, because that's the only thing that this government understands. They don't care, basically, because their kids are going to private schools. They're making, imagine a teacher is getting a horn $80,000. They're getting 10 times that amount. A minister is getting 10 times that amount. I see somebody say, the Minister of Education getting $1.8 million a month. So that's the disparity. And so they don't care unless the country, not only the teachers, they cannot do it alone, unless the country come to this worthy cause and support them. And I think that this year is an awakening for this nation. We are at the crossroads. And if everybody do not jump in here, the entire country, because it's going to come home, it's going to hit home to every single person in the nation. So we all are calling upon the entire nation to join with the teachers.
Dr. Vincent Adams here. And Dr. Adams, you've already taken us into the political realm, because you said 2% of the infrastructure budget will meet the teachers' demands. That makes sense. That would have made sense to your mother, to my mother, your auntie, my auntie. It would have made sense to any reasonable finance minister, any reasonable president. And I am sure it would make sense to the leaders today. But they're not moving in that direction. In a country where our government has been quite liberal in sharing out monies, not small money. I'm not talking about the little thing that they go in the street corner and share out. I'm talking about monies to fishermen and women, monies to severed sugar workers, monies to rice farmers, and so forth. And these are monies that I am sure those people welcomed, and they've put it to very good use. But while being liberal, relatively liberal to some sections, you're literally fighting, not 1 cent. You're not budging, not even 1 cent. There's no counter proposal to say the teachers are asking for 20% and I'm putting 10% to the table. You are literally saying nothing. And it's not that I'm not giving you anything. I am going to fight you. And if the court come on your side, we're going to try to torpedo that. You go back to the court. There is something that is operating here that is not normal. Dr. Vincent Adams, what is the subtext to all of this, given everything that I said there just now? And I want to repeat, the monies that were given to fishermen and women, fisher folk, monies to the severed sugar workers, monies to rice farmers, those are monies that those people deserve. And that I'm sure that those people put it to very good use. But I'm saying, why does the liberalism stop when it comes to teachers? What is the subtext?
Well, the subtext is clear, clear for all to see. Okay, it's clear for all to see. Who are the majority of the people who work in the teaching industry, right? It's African Americans, basically. Well, not African Americans, African Guyanese. And of course, who works in the sugar industry? And I can freely talk about this because, like I said before, nobody can accuse me of that. My mother is Indian, my father is black. So let me put that aside here for full disclosure. But that's a fact. And even my Indian relatives, even they and friends, they recognize that. You've got to be blind not to see that. Look, and so that's the very simple subtext there, Doc. That's the very simple, because even if you go beyond that, let's look at the infrastructure. Look, forget about the discrimination against the teachers themselves. Where is the 60% of the budget. Who are the contractors? That time, who are the contractors? Remember, Nigel Hughes did a very thorough study. What is it? Over 80 or 90% of the people who are the contractors, which segment of the population do they belong to? We know, and it's also the cronies, or people who do not even have any capability whatsoever. They prefer to give them that money. Like that contract that was given to one of their staunchest supporters, who has no ability whatsoever to it. The close to $1 billion contract. So that's the kind of thing that is happening, and it's very clear, and it's so barefaced that it doesn't matter. And here is why this is so egregious, Dr. Hein. Here is just rich, and going back to that song, how come we suffering in this oil-rich country? A country now that is regarded as probably the richest on the planet, with the highest GDP and all this fancy stuff that doesn't mean anything to more than half of the majority of the population. When 45% of the population live on $5.50 per day, $5.50 per day. We barely more. I was reading something today, barely ahead of Haiti. And Haiti is I look at some pictures with Haiti in full squalor, and let's take a lesson. Do you see what has happened now in Haiti? Haiti lives on $2 per day. We are about $5 per day, and it's there's not a whole lot. As a matter of fact, we are even below Haiti in a recent UN study that showed, in terms of malnutrition of kids, we are 2 times worse than Haiti for malnutrition of our kids, a country such as Haiti. Here, even with here is just to make a comparison again with the countries in our neighborhood that does not have a drop of oil. Some of them, Trinidad's salary. Remember, I told you our average salary for teachers is about $800 to $850. Trinidad is twice that, about $1,500. Trinidad. But listen to this. Grenada that doesn't have a drop of oil, it's $1,900. Mm-hmm. 2.5 times. Grenada is $1,900. Dominica doesn't have any oil, $1,700 per teacher. Even the country such as St. Martin, $2,700. $2,700. Antigua is $1,110. So even if what I'm saying here, even with this 50%, which is paltry, by the way, 50% for this oil-rich country that has the biggest GDP and all this kinds of stuff, even with a 50% raise, we would still be way below these countries. We would get up to what, like 1,200, when Trinidad has 15, and like I said, like Grenada is 1,900. So this is not something that, when I hear that somehow they're trying to make this out as if it's unreasonable, and they've been using those words, that it's unreasonable. So Guyanese need to see what the facts are. And then they're trying to con people. Like the president now, one of his favorite lines is that the teachers have gotten raised, the education body went up by 162% within the last few years, since 2020. But what he doesn't say, and that's how this guy operates, what he doesn't tell you is that infrastructure went up over 500%. His new line is, well, they went up 100. I'm hearing it every time he gets a chance. 162%. Well, guess what? Infrastructure went up by over 500. That's 3 times. But he ain't telling you that. He ain't telling you that. So that's the kind of thing we're dealing with. But to get back to your original question, it's clear as day as to why these folks are the teachers are being treated the way they are, because they are like we used to say, you were on the wrong side of
yes.
the tracks.
You're wrong finding the railway track down in the south where you are there. Yes, yes.
That's what is happening here.
You know, Dr. Adams, listen, the PPP gives to friends, families, and favorites. And that is on the ball. But I think we need to go one step forward. It is not just who they're giving to, but it's also who they are denying.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And I think we have to extend that construct. Friends, family, and favorites who they're giving, and then we have to have a category who they are denying.
Yep.
All right? Now, they may not be giving the Indian Guyanese working class as much as they deserve.
Yep.
But they're not denying them the same way as they're denying the African Guyanese and to some extent the Amerindian Guyanese working class. Let me repeat what I'm saying here, all right? They are not giving the Indian Guyanese working class what they deserve. They deserve more policy-wise, and in every way, the Indian Guyanese working class deserve more than they're getting from the PPP.
Yes.
But the government is not denying them in a blatant way as they're denying the African working class. So while they're not giving the Indian working class as much as they deserve, they're not blatantly denying them. When Gawu sneezes, the PPP respond as they should. As they should whenever a trade union, whether it's a sugar workers trade union or public, you should respond. So we are not beating the PPP for responding to Gawu. They should. What we are pointing out to Guyana and the world is that they're not responding to the teachers union and the Guyana Public Servant Union in a similar way. And so for our friends who like to say that being anti-PPP is anti-Indian, that nonsense that they come with. No, nobody's Indian. If Indian people earn more, it makes all of us better. But African Guyanese and Amerindian Guyanese should earn too. And so the government gives certain categories and then it denies certain categories. And look at what they're doing. This is brutalization of the teachers union. It's brutalization. It's that you're beating them every day. The court come on their side and you're telling the court, go to hell. We are going to continue to beat these people. All people will say, well, what? Are we get Coco Bear? And indeed, to the PPP, teachers and public servants and people like them do have political cocobe as far as the PPP is concerned. They are untouchables. And they're teaching them, they're treating them as untouchable. It's a political caste system that the PPP is. Teachers are untouchable. You don't even want to sit down at the same table with them. Every time they come with something, you come with some excuse. But they get Coco Bear. And if people are treated in that way, as you have said, and all of us have said, they have a right to assert their humanity. Because this is what it's about. It's a human right to want a living wage. It's a human right. This is not to be left to the whims and fancy of the PPP or any government. It's a human right to have a living wage, because without a living wage, you can't enjoy other rights. Other rights flow from the right to life. And at the center of the right to life is a living wage. And we have come too far for this impasse to be happening here. And I think part of it, Dr. Adams, is that they're well-meaning people, well-meaning forces in this society who know that what the PPP is morally wrong, is politically wrong, is wrong from a standpoint of human rights, but they get themselves tangled in all kinds of mess that they cannot speak straight. And the PPP is getting away from that. Because the minute people say, well, you're treating the teachers because they're black, they say, oh, you're racist. And people run and duck and hide from that. And then for the same people who don't want to say that the PPP is racist for the way they treat the teachers, these people now talk about the way they allow Exxon to walk all over our country. And then they turn to the same people and say, you're racist. The point I'm making, anything you oppose the PPP, you're going to be called racist. Yep. Because Freddie Kissoons and others of this world have come up with that thesis that opposition to the PPP has nothing to do with what they do wrong. It has to do with some inherent thing in some of us who don't want to see Indian people govern. But I hope they're not talking to my village. Because when the PPP God died, and they were passing African villages like exam, my African village said, you ain't passing this village with this body. You all, he may have been the head of your own party. We may not have voted for him, but our political upbringing says that when a good man passes, even for all his flaws, we must pay our homage. And that was African dignity at its finest. At its finest. So to say that we are racist is really flies in the face. And I think people who have voices should stop it. Should stop the PPP and remind the PPP of the goodwill that has come from both sides. Has come from both sides. So this matter, my brother, has to be a matter that we have to, as you have pointed out, we have to make it a larger issue. Because it is not just about a government, stalling with workers. It's a government that is brutalizing a certain section of the workforce in a direct way. And so I think the teachers need to go back on the road. You and I and many of us said the court brought us here. Even when many of the supporters were saying the teachers should not come off, we said, all right, here is the goodwill. Here is our respect for the institutions. We're going to come off the road. Teachers come off the road and go to the table. The teachers came off the road and went to the table, and the government has responded this way. You know what? They have now strengthened the teachers' position. When the teachers go back to the road now, Dr. Adams, there are no ifs and buts about where it goes. Because they came off the road and you slammed the door in their faces. And this time when they come back on the road, it can be business as usual. Dr. Vincent Adams.
Yes, like you mentioned a great man in Dr. Chetty Jagan there, and he's got to be rolling in his grave. This PPP party is no longer a Jagan party, and that is a fact. It's, as a matter of fact, you recall, which is the fact, and Kemraj mentions this all the time, that the now cultist leader of this PPP party, he chased Janet out of Freedom House.
Yes.
He chased Janet out of Freedom House. So we know that this party has changed. But the thing is, sometimes they're not even smart enough. Because now I believe they're overplaying their hands here, Dr. Hines. And let me tell you why. Mm-hmm. They might be just targeting a certain section of our population, a certain race in our population. However, it's also impacting the poor Indians and their own set of people. Look at, when we had the cane cutters issue, with cane cutters making menial wages, and they cannot just sustain, as soon as something happens, they just hand out the 25,000, to deal with the poor people, with the masses. They're overplaying their hands, because I know it's the same Indian folks who've got to go buy pumpkin for $1,000 a slice. They've got the stuff. They got to get their kids to school. They've got to, so find shelter. So it's backfiring. This here is going to become a class problem for them. There's a class divide here that is developing. And I'm telling you, we see what is happening in Haiti. This here is a class divide. And you know why it's going to be worse here in Guyana, Dr. Hines? Because the gap is going to be much larger. Because when you look, for example, just using that example between infrastructure that has 60% of the budget compares to education that is 11% of the budget. And I'm only using education. You can imagine what's happening with the other industries that are even below education, where most of the masses work. So that gap, as that gap widens, that's what's going to trigger unrest in this country. In this country, because you know what inflation is in Guyana, and what is happening because of these rich people who are disproportionately making more. The cost of housing and everything is going up extraordinarily. So there's no way that they can keep up. The poor people can keep up with that gap, and it's that gap that is going to cause friction and conflict between those. So they're sending this country towards a class. This here is going to be a class divide, and it's not
ultimately that's where it goes.
Absolutely.
But, yeah.
That's where it's going, because right now it's impacting those poor Indians. And the thing is, and I know for a fact that especially in those Indian communities, they're scared to complain because they're getting threatened. And then these guys, they've got the nerve to go to Babu Jan and pretend as if it's a Jagan party and it's in memorial of the great leader, and it's all a hoax again. Is to try to keep their people, the Indian community somehow together and to fear the black folks. But I'm telling you, and I'm encouraged to Dr. Hines by even the same teacher strike, that there are teachers who came out from all of the communities who defied all intimidation and everything else. And I'm sure that there are lots of those who are fearful of coming out and showing their support. But the thing is, we have seen not only in the Indian, but also in the Amerindian community, in Region 2, and those communities, they've all come out. So, and this here, to me, they themselves have seen those who were kind of scared and concerned to come out. I think they've seen with their own eyes that the government was given an opportunity, and now they've seen that they have no good intentions and it's not the good faith. And I think when they go out again, if something does not happen in this mediation, it's going to be much bigger and it's going to get their attention.
It's going to get their attention. Welcome to Politics 101, Sister Rhonda, who is saying that Dr. Jagan talked about Apanjat. And Sister Rhonda, we have to be fair. We have to be fair, and we have to. And I do not subscribe to the politics of tit for tat in a certain way. Dr. Jagan never uttered that term, Apanjat. Never. Did Dr. Jagan benefit from Apanjat politics? Yes. Apanjat means vote for your own. Did Dr. Jagan benefit from vote for your own? Yes. But so did Burnham. Both sides benefit from vote for your own. So we have to be very careful, Sister Rhonda, when we are saying these things, right? We are a country of vote for your own, all right? That's what it does mean, Yep. Dr. Jagan didn't utter the word Apanjat. It was uttered in 1953 against Dr. Jagan by a man named Daniel Debedin, right? Who was outside of the PPP and who were telling Indians, vote for your own. Jagan is not for your all people. He dying up in them black man. Burnham and Sidney King and them in the PPP and vote for your own. So Apanjat was used against Jagan. But by the time we got to 1957 after the split, Jagan accepted the logic of Apanjat politics, right? Which is vote for your own. And the PNC also had to adopt the logic of Apanjat politics. And we are still living with Apanjat politics, which is vote for your own. And I am not sitting up here and tell no Indian that if you want to vote for the PPP to protect your Indian interest, that you shouldn't do it. But I don't want no leader to tell black people that if you all decide to vote for the PNC or the coalition to protect your racial interests, that you are wrong. And I sometimes hear somebody like Donald Ramotar who would say the Indians support the PPP because the PPP was a fighting for working class interests. So Indians support the PPP not for their Indian interests, but for their working class interests. But the black people who support the PNC were misguided because they support the PNC for racial interests because the PNC was not looking after the class interests. And I hear Donald with that thing over and over again. And I would like Donald to go to Melanie and ask those people with a little 2, 3 by 4 house, right? Poor black people, right? Those houses, or go to Amelia's ward and tell those people that the PPP, the PNC, didn't do those housing schemes for their class interests because they were poor black people who could move out from the alleys, which you know very well, and move up to Amelia's ward. And that, of course, Burnham and the PNC did have class-based policies. So if you are saying Indians gravitate to the PPP because the PPP look after their class interests, but black people gravitate to the PNC and the PNC never look after their class interests, don't tell that to a David Hines who born a barefoot boy at Bottom Station and because of free education could have gone to UG free for his first 2 years. How are you going to, and I was fighting Burnham. How can you then tell me that Burnham and the PNC didn't look after the class interests of black people? They'd look after the class interests of black people, just as the PPP looked after the class interests of black people. But to say that black people gravitate to the PNC only out of race is to say that black people are some other they got some screws loose. They're stupid. They're stupid. They should not have supported the PNC. They should have gone and supported the PPP. We live in a country of vote for your own. Some people, most people, see vote for your own in racial terms. God bless them. There are some of us who consider ourselves to be above race. All right. And so we vote for party based on their issues. I always remind people, you know, for decades, we always had a collective leadership in the WPA. But it was clear that Rupert Rupnarayan was the first among equals. And he's an Indian man. And he never got a fight down from the Africans. There's me leader. There's me leader. Yet people run around the place. David, I just don't want Indian people to be on top. And in 1992, I supported Jagan coming to power. No ifs and buts about that. We had fought against the PNC excesses. We would have loved a different outcome, a power-sharing government with all the forces. But at that point in 1992, I went along with the PPP, even though I didn't vote for them. I went along with them as an alternative to the then PNC. But it didn't take me 5 years to realize that they're going to do the same thing as the other one that we move. And that is why I continue to believe one of the first solutions to our problems is joint government, where all groups or each group is represented at the table. I know it's not a popular thing among our supporters, many of who want revenge. And revenge is a natural human being instinct, and I understand it. But sometimes we have to fight. So, Rhonda, no, Dr. Jagger never uttered the word Apanjat, right? He benefited from Apanjat politics, and that's a fact. That's a fact, but he never uttered the word Apanjat. And I don't want to help to socialize black people to do what Jack Dio is doing. Jack Dio sits up there and lies to the Guyanese people, take down the discourse to such a low, nasty level. And I don't want us to be like that. I don't want us to be like that. We came out of those slave plantations, whatever else we came out with dignity. And for me, I am making a distinction between the dignified African and the undignified African. Those Africans who are stretching out their tongue and bending down their head and licking the know what of the PPP, they're not my African. They're not my African. So I am not African regardless of who you are. African soup drinkers are not my brothers and sisters. They are not. And in the same way, I don't want black people to lie on jargon. Don't lie on jargon. Because I also don't want Indian people to lie on Borno. All right? So don't lie on jargon. He did not, never utter the term Apanjat. He benefited from Apanjat politics. Dr. Vincent Adams.
Dr. Hines, I'm glad that you explained that, because it's very fundamental, especially Guyana population, for example, half of it is below the age of 26. And most of them don't even remember Jagan and Bornum. But when they hear those type of things about what, Jagan is, because I hear it all the time too, this Apanjat stuff, and I know that that's not true. Vote for your own has become part of our, just like if it's become part of our DNA from both sides. So it's not, it's something now, and regardless, and that's one of the major problems that we have, and that's the reason why the people such as the Bharat Jagdios and them, they know that they take advantage of that, by the way, and they have no intention of changing, because they know they're more Indians basically than black folks. So that's all they rely upon and take advantage of that. And until I don't care how much oil we produce, Dr. Hines, I don't care how rich we get, until we can get over that, Guyana will never become a rich country. We will never become, and they believe in a serious way. And, I tell my politician friends a lot of times, even in serious conversations, I keep telling them, I said, the only thing that's going to solve this, I know you got your solution with shared governance, which is the popular idea, but mine is even simpler. Put a Douglas man or a Douglas woman in charge. That's the only person who both sides would trust, a trustworthy Douglas person. And for full disclosure, I forget, this has nothing to do with me, but I'm telling you, because that's how people vote. I tell folks, if you bring Satan and put him to head the PNC party, the black folks are gonna vote for him. And if you put him to head the PPP party, the Indian people are gonna vote for him, which is a very sad commentary. But we've got to get rid of that barrier of the distrust of our leaders, because everything that the PPP leader does, obviously the black folks, the black are not gonna trust it, because, and then everything that the PNC or the APNU leader does, the PPP folks will not going to trust it. They're all going to be all kind of critical. So we need trust has to come from the top. But I'm glad you explained that away and make it clear, especially to those folks who were not in our generation, to know exactly what the history about that was all about.
Thank you very much, my brother. If a black man comes up to me, or a black woman comes up to me and said, Dr. Hines, I'm going to give you my vote because you defend the interests of black people. you defend the dignity of black people. I'm going to tell them, don't give me a vote. I'll tell, go and find 1,000 more and bring them. Go and find 1,000 more and bring them. If you tell me you're putting your X next to my name, because I defend, among other things, your African dignity, and you come to me and said, Dr. Hines, I'm giving you my vote, you think I'm going to tell you, go and come back and tell me, come back and tell me you're voting for me because of your working class? No, I'm going to tell you, go and find 1,000 more. And if an Indian brother or sister comes to me and said, Dr. Hines, I am supporting you because although you are African and you argue for African emancipation, you also argue for an end to poverty for all people, and that you belong to a party that put forward a proposal called the Universal Basic Income for all family. You think I'm going to tell that Indian person, don't vote for me because of that? I'll tell them, go and bring 1,000, 2,000 more. So there's no crime in somebody who identifies with a party or a leader for ethnic interests, because they're not saying that is the only interest. There's African and there is African. There are African reactionaries and there are African revolutionaries. And I would like, if Africans are going to come to me and give me their vote, it is because I'm an African revolutionary, not because I'm an African reactionary. And that is why I'm saying on this program, I don't want reactionary Africans. I'm not in love with them. I'm in love with progressive Africans. I'm not in love with reactionary Africans. And when I look across the other side and see some of my brothers there who are beating up on Jagan, not because Jagan made mistake, of course he made mistake, but beating up on Jagan so that they can endorse the scoundrels who are at the top of the PPP today, because that's what they are, political scoundrels. And so therefore I am not into African scoundrels or East Indian scoundrels or Amerindian scoundrels. If we are talking about African, you all hear me good tonight. I am talking about revolutionary and progressive Africans. I don't have time to go and pick up an African at the street corner and bring him in just to make me look good, or to pick up an Indian at the street corner and bring him aside of me to look good. No. I'm not into that kind of politics. Welcome to Politics 101.
You know, Dr. Hines, and this is a very, very important discussion in the context of Guyana, especially at this point in time with the teacher strike, because it's bringing forth in high visibility a major issue in terms of the division of this nation. And peace peace and harmony among the races is so important. And it's just as if the current government is turning a blind eye to that importance. You and I grew up in the 60s. You might be much younger than that, but I was in the 1963 riots in Linden, and I saw, as a matter of fact, I myself experienced it personally when my parents had to be, ripped away from me and my father. They had to go live in an Indian area at Sue's Dyke, leave my father alone in Linden. And the same thing was happening in the Indian areas with the black people who were living there. So we do not, I've experienced it firsthand. We do not want to go back there. And for them to be, for this government to be saying that, okay, if I have to take 2% out of this rich pool of money that I can more than afford, 2% out of this infrastructure budget to start some conversation, or to at least start making one section of the community at least feel a little bit uncomfortable, and to start developing that trust as we start developing our economy. It's worth it. It's worth it, Doctor. 2% or $14 billion out of a $1.146 trillion. 2% of that money that you're taking out of the rich man's, out of the out of the less than 1% pockets. 2% of that money that you cannot invest to make sure we have peace and unity in this country. So that's the conundrum that I really do not understand. Why is that not obvious? If you really want unity in the country, or if I guess your only other choice or favor is that you don't want unity, because that's how you maintain power without having a unified nation. Because then when you have a unified nation, they're gonna vote for what is best for their interest. If you have a unified nation, but now it's along racial lines, and it's got to be fixed.
It's got to be fixed. And thank you very much, Linda Campbell, Cookie, my classmate, my schoolmate, my classmate. Thank you very much. And I'm not talking water in my mouth. If you all want to give me vote because you all think I'm black and beautiful, please find 5,000 more and bring them. If you all want to give me your vote because I look out for poor people, and we are about issues and policies that will benefit poor people of all races, go and find 5,000 more like yourself and come. If you want to give me your vote just because I come from Buxton and you all love me as a fellow Buxtonian, go and bring the whole of Buxton. What the point I'm making is that I want every single vote, because we are not a monolith. Some people will like me because I am black and beautiful. And I don't mean, because some of you all will say, well, blackness and beauty don't go together. But you all are talking about different kind of beauty. If you all want to love me for that, beautiful. If you all want to love me because I stand with poor people, come. If you all want to love me because I love villages, come. I am not chasing away not a single vote. And I am not telling anybody if they want to vote for a candidate or a party because they feel that candidate or party represent their ethnic interests. I am not telling them they're wrong and they're stupid. No, every man kiss his wife different. Every man kiss his wife different. I'm talking about old-time wisdom. You all don't get cheeky with me now. How do I know that? I only kiss my wife, and theoretically, I assume that everybody else does kiss their wife differently. All right, you all don't get it. Doc, up your alley. ExxonMobil Guyana announces you all fine. Talk to us. How come?
Well, this here is there's a good and bad of this story. And the good side is that yes, this here is becoming a really good habit of discovery. And by the way, in the industry, we have not seen this in recent, when I say recent, even in past decades or even in the past century, where the rapidity of oil discoveries in any other part of the world, normally you would be lucky if you get, for every 50 wells, you get one well that has some economic show of oil. And in Guyana, it's like 80%, over 80% success. And that is why Exxon has put all of his bets in Guyana. And by the way, there are two focus of Exxon's entire investments right now and long-term plan in Guyana and in the Permian Basin in West Texas. It so happened that that's where my petroleum career was, where I spent it in the Permian Basin of West Texas. But here we are. I think this here was like the 40th or 41st discovery We, since the 20, I can't remember, I think it was the 20th discovery or something of the sort, it has been 11 billion barrels of oil that was announced since April of 2022, 2 years ago, Dr. Hines. And if you recall, every time there was a discovery, there was an update immediately after that discovery to tell us how much that reservoir has, and what is the total quantity. Every time there was a discovery. And then suddenly within the last 2 years, no information whatsoever. And then this vice president goes and when the question is being raised, he's coming up with all to support Exxon, of course, because he kowtows to them. It doesn't matter what they say. He finds a reason, as stupid as it may sound most of the time, to support their excuses. So we call upon him because he's getting the information without question. They're updating him, but here's why they don't want this data to be published and to be made known, because they're afraid that people like us and a lot of the other experts are going to get too much information to ask the right questions and to do our own analysis. And and the thing is that really galls me, Dr. Hines, is when they really play us for fools. When they play us for fools, that we're this and even the vice president's coming up with this nonsense like he always does, is to say, we are focusing. We can't give you guys an update because we're focusing on monetizing our discoveries. How you you could only monetize after you know what you got, right? You can only monetize after you know what you got. But here's the other stupidity of that, or the other hoax in that statement. In a company such as Exxon, the monetization department is totally different and independent of the production department. So it's not a case where it's the same people. When you say that you're focusing on something, that means that is the same resources you're using for both, so you're prioritizing. It's nonsense. Both of them work in parallel with each other. So that is why they believe that somehow we're fools not to know these type of things, but they're hiding this information from us, and we're allowing them to get away with it. When I say we are the people who are governing this country that is supposed to be representing our interests, but they're not. We've seen so many examples that they've betrayed their people. Look, I always have to use, for example, how more basic could you get in terms of a betrayal when they sided with Exxon not to have a parent company guarantee to cover a spill that could bankrupt this country, not only this country, but the entire Caribbean. They went against their own people, and that something as basic as that. So it's the modus operandi of what we have here. And then every Thursday, this vice president gets up there but you see, trades on the fact too, Dr. Hine, is that Guyana is this whole oil industry is new to the people. Most of the people do not have a clue as to what it means. So he gets up there and spouts stuff, and as a leader, you have a tendency to believe, because a lot of people still, I don't think he's gonna lie to us in any bad way or any dangerous way. But that's exactly what he's doing. See, so that's why he and others hate people like us when we raise questions and bring out the facts. And I intend to use my expertise, and I know you intend to do the same thing. I'm not gonna stop, because if they do not want to represent the people, we who are sitting on these type of platforms, we have got to represent the people, because if they're not doing their jobs, somebody has to do it. And had it not been for those same people or the people before us to put us in the positions that we are in to do what we can do, we would not have been here. So they put us here for a reason, Dr. Hines, and that's why it's a commitment to us and an obligation on our part. But they don't like that. They don't like that.
If you're in Linden, tomorrow the APNU AFC has a public meeting in Linden to focus on the cost of living. We are calling on all of you supporters to go out there and to support that rally. Yes, you can stay on social media and hear what's going on because we have the technology now to do so. But there is nothing that beats actual bodies there. Please go out to that rally tomorrow in Linden, the APNU AFC Cost of Living Rally. Please go out there. No, my party, the WPA, was not invited to participate. We were not invited. I don't know why we were not invited, but I'm saying in the name of the WPA here tonight that we are calling on all supporters and even non-supporters to go out and support that rally. Go out and support that rally because it is important that we show physical numbers on the ground. So all of you in Linden, those of you who are partial to some of us who will not be on the platform, that should not be an excuse not to go out there. Go out and to support that rally. We continue here in Politics 101 to argue for an all-opposition front. And we make very clear where we stand in that. And to credit to the powers that be in the opposition side, they did invite us to the meeting at Burnham Court. They did. This time around, at Linden, they didn't invite us. I don't know why. They know why. But that is neither here nor there for us. For us, what is important is the larger struggle. Please go out and support that meeting. That public meeting is going to be in your hometown. Dr. Adams, please make your pitch here.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, if Linden, if they do not wake up, and I know that this government is focusing on Linden, but please, my fellow Lindeners, do not let them fool you. This year is not for just the short term when they come and give you a handout to basically bribe you. This year is for the long term. This is not just because of an election that is coming up. What you got to think about what is going to happen after the election. Because when they get in there, and trust me, this here is a critical election. If they win this election, it's going to be almost impossible to remove them from office because it's you know, they're going to rig every single thing in terms of the governance structure. So pay attention. And this year is about not only you, but the generations to come. So don't let this short term and quick money that they might be coming up there and bribing you with, don't let that get you. Go ahead, take whatever you can take. I mean, but no, and I know when I was growing up as a little boy, you know, it used to happen in not such a big way. And regardless, when time come to vote, still 100% almost still used to go for go back home. So I hope that, and this is not about race, because I would not have been saying this if I thought that this current government was doing good for every single member of our society with equity and fairness. I would not have been saying this, but because of what I'm seeing, it's only one. Like I said, it's this less than 1% who getting all of the hog of the money, which is their friends, family, and favorites. And I know that most of Lindeners are not in that 1% for a fact. So to take care of your interests and the future generations' interests for Linden, don't let these quick handouts before elections within the next year, because you see that that's what they're doing. Don't let that fool you. So please go to these meetings, hear what the facts are, and don't be afraid to pepper the coalition with the right questions and hold them responsible. Hold them responsible and accountable.
Yep.
Don't let them get away with the same things that that we're experiencing with this government. When you ask them a question, they do not have a real answer. Force them to tell you exactly what they will be doing for you in specific terms. Ask them, how are you going to change my life? This is what is happening here now. Give me specifically, I want a commitment. Sign it in blood that this is what you will be doing for my community. Don't let them get away with political answers and going around the bush. Please do not do that. Just get straight answers and hold them, commit them to it. And if they don't, if they're not gonna want to be held responsible or give you a strong commitment, then you're gonna have to decide. But you wouldn't commit yourself to them either. But so please go to these meetings, and like I said, ask all the tough questions, but ask them some straight questions and let them give you some straight answers that you're comfortable with, and you can trust answers that you can trust and make sense, by the way. And make sense.
Dr. Vincent Adams, Dr. Adams, I know you wanted to say something about the migrants. I'll be running out of time, but just if you can introduce it, and
yes,
we can expand when we come next week.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's just again, this whole propagandistic way of the vice president. Would you believe the vice president got up there yesterday? And you remember there was a question in the media, and I think it was Amanzo Walton or somebody raised it. And so he decided to go after Amanzo. And then he said, well, all of the migrants who are coming back are predominantly Guyanese who had migrated. And they migrated because of the oppression during the PNC time, or the APNU AFC time between 2015 and 2020. It's the most ridiculous statement, without talking about the 22 years that they were in office before. He gave the impression that there were no migration during the time before 2015. Is the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard. So, but I would like, Dr. Hines and I've already got my sources out there trying to get the data on those migration, on the migration numbers before 2015, during that 22 years, because they've got to face up to it. Since he's the one that is bringing it up and trying to give people the impression, well, the only time that people went to Venezuela between 2015 and 2020, which is absolutely ridiculous. So we've got to, since he brought it up, we've got to confront him with the real data.
Dr. Vincent Adams here on a Friday night for some of you, further afield, Friday afternoon for some of you who are in the part of the world that I am from. But we are all gathered together here on a Friday night to witness on our own behalf. And so I would like to thank you all for staying with us for another hour and a half, and to thank Dr. Adams for taking the time to come here and to help us to open up some of these issues and to give them more meaning than yesterday. It's the weekend, Doc, and I hope you are able to have a productive weekend, because the struggle goes on.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm heading back home to Tennessee. I'm in Florida, like as I mentioned to you.
Yeah.
So I'm heading back to Florida. I mean to Tennessee starting tomorrow. I'll stop in Georgia and then head to Tennessee on Sunday. So yes, I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you very much, my brother.
Anytime.
Yeah. And thank you all, as usual, for staying put. Have a good weekend, a productive weekend, because the struggle continues. The teachers are going to define next week. Next week is going to be a defining week in the teachers' struggle, because it's now a struggle. It's now a struggle. It's going to be a defining week as to what's the next move by the teachers. Whatever the teachers decide to do, we are supporting them. We are supporting them whatever they decide to do. All of us have our views on what they should do, what they should not have done, and so on. And that's all part of the concourse of ideas. But at the end of the day, we throw our support behind the teachers and the union as they proceed on this, what is clear is a political battle. What the government is doing is not fighting the teachers on the issues of industrial relations and industrial issues. They're fighting the teachers politically. The teachers have a right to continue to fight within the context and within the confines of industrial relations. Continue to do that, GTU. Continue to do that, teachers. Fight within the context of industrial relations. That's what your objective is. And the political fight has to come beyond your ranks, beyond your ranks. The teachers at this time is leading an industrial relations struggle that will have political consequences. But we have to be very careful that we don't force them to become politicians. There are times when you have to cut yourself in 3 and 4. Part of you got to be a politician, part of you got to be a trade unionist, part of you got to be a cultural activist. We are accustomed to that in the Caribbean. We are accustomed to that in Guyana. Our trade unionism is a political trade unionism. I see people dancing around. The Caribbean model of trade unionism is a political trade unionism. I hear Jack and them talking nonsense. We have always had political trade unionism. The first blow, or the first major blow in the 20th century for political independence came from the trade unions. The so-called 1930s uprisings, or 1930s riots as they call them, which really struck the last decisive blow against colonialism, was led by the trade unions. And in those days, the trade unions had what was called political arms. And it is those political arms that went on to become the political parties. And so we have always had a political trade union. We had to. The fight against colonialism was not just a fight for better wages for workers, but it was a fight for better wages and working conditions for workers under a system called colonialism, a political system. So it was a trade union struggle, but it was also a political struggle, hence the concept of political trade unionism. It's not the same kind of trade unionism in some of the other countries, but even when you go to a place like England, the TUC, the trade unions, were mostly aligned with the Labour Party. There was a trade union arm of the Labour Party. Political trade unionism is nothing new. Nothing new. And don't let people make you all feel defensive. Let the teachers carry out the industrial relations struggle within the rules of industrial relations. Let history show that it is the teachers who respected the rules of industrial relations, the norms, and that it was the PPP government that disrespected it. Let the teachers continue to mount a trade union struggle that will have political, and that has already had it already has political consequences. But it's for us, the political activists, to lead the political aspect of the struggle, not the union members and the union leaders. No. And I think sometimes we get it wrong. Sometimes in our enthusiasm, we want the GTU to become the PNC or the AFC and the WPA. Oh no, let the GTU remain the GTU. And that those of us in the PNC and the AFC and the WPA should draw strength from what the GTU and the teachers are doing, and to use that as use that momentum that is introduced by the teachers to advance our political side of the struggle. Sometimes there has to be division of labor. The objective is the same: the right to a living wage is an industrial right and a political right. Because a living wage will mean that you have a right to a better life. And so, yes, there is a relationship between the two, but division of labor is very important right now. Let the teachers struggle, because we have to restore collective bargaining as a democratic norm. And you have to fight in that arena to restore collective bargaining. That is what the teachers are about here. It's about restoring collective bargaining as a means to a living wage. And we, the political activists, have to carry the political side of the fight. We can't expect the GTU to do what the PNC and the AFC and WPA are supposed to do. Oh no, let the teachers do their due. And let us not try to impose our political agenda on the trade unions. Let the trade unions be trade unions. And let us feed off the benefits that come from the trade union mobilization. That is my plea as we take our leave for our couple days off, and we are going to be back on Monday, rearing as always to go. This is my hand for the revolution, says Martin Carter. This is my hand for the revolution. That night, there will be thousands of torches. From the hospital, the lame will come. Those who are mad will become sane for the revolution. Those who despair shall be happy for the revolution. And I myself shall be so fiercely happy that I will make my shirt a banner for the revolution. A banner for the revolution. The words and the wisdom of our national poet, Martin Carter. They call him spy, they call him all kind of thing. For me and for all of us, he's our poet, our poetic voice, making real our experiences, making real our experiences. I make my shirt a banner for the revolution, a banner for the revolution. Go to that rally tomorrow night at Linden, and we'll talk about it on Monday.